GMs for hire.
Welcome back to another episode of GMs for Hire. I am Jamel King. With me is Matthew Perry, and today we're continuing talking about the National Football League. Today we are going into a deep dive of the NFC West. This division on paper is a gauntlet. It is a very, very good division, arguably the best division in football. Four very, very good teams within the Rams, the Seahawks, the Niners, and the Cardinals. Matt, you mentioned off camera that this is basically the AL East of football. It's very, very stacked.
Yeah, I mean, there's no clear outlier as to who's finishing first this year and no clear outlier as to who's finishing fourth. I do think this could come down to the final weeks as to who winds up winning this division. A couple teams in this division made big improvements. A couple kind of stayed quiet in the offseason, but when we get to those teams, we'll talk about them, of course. But it's definitely not going to be easy for either team.
No, it won't be. There is no team that you would necessarily say is bad, and there's no team you could say they're definitely finishing last. And there's no team you could probably say they're for sure finishing first.
Yeah.
That's the sign of a very, very good division. You're going to earn your keep every Sunday, especially in division games. And like you said, this division will probably come down to the last week or two, just like it did last year. It came down to the wire. So let's just get right into it. The team that made probably the biggest move of the offseason in this division was the Los Angeles Rams, a team that finished second in their division. End up going farther in the playoffs than any team in their division by knocking out division rival in the Seattle Seahawks in the wildcard game. They dumped their quarterback. No longer is Jared Goff the quarterback, the former number one overall pick for this team when they first moved to LA. He's gone. In comes veteran Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, a guy I very, very high on, a guy that I think is really, really good. But he has been in very, very bad situations with the Detroit Lions ever since Calvin Johnson said he was retiring. This team has struggled on offense and struggled to give Matthew Stafford the help he needs via weapons, via running back, and via O-line. So he comes over to the Los Angeles teams, and all that's different. Sean McVay is a quarterback genius. Everything we've heard about him, he's turning out coaches left and right that just touch his headset. You can become a head coach. So, Matt, how do you feel about Matthew Stafford heading over to LA?
I mean, this was fantastic. We have a video on it from months back when it happened. Will was excited. We're excited about it. It's a great trade for the Rams. They improve. I do think Stafford's a much better quarterback than Jared Goff. Stafford's now with Sean McVay, like you mentioned, which is, I'd say, Stafford's best head coach in forever. And he's got weapons. He's got receivers now. He has a pretty solid offensive line keeping him safe. Stafford is in the best situation of his career, and we've yet to see him on a team that could really thrive and maybe even make a pretty deep playoff push until now. And, this is really prime time for Matt Stafford. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do with these weapons.
Yeah, I'm right with you there. I think this is absolutely huge. I think this is going to be some of the best time Matthew Stafford's played with. And more importantly, like you mentioned, finally has a chance to win. He's on a team that's supposed to be good. The Detroit Lions, that a couple of times, you would look at their team and say, all right, like they're gonna flirt with the wild card. Like there's a couple of years there where they made the playoffs with the wild card. But now he's on a team that has aspirations to win a Super Bowl, a team that has aspirations to win this division, go on a long run. And he has not had that. You mentioned the weapons. He has Cooper Kupp. He's got Deshaun Jackson. He's got Robert Woods. He's got Tyler Higbee. He's got a lot of different people to throw the ball to. Obviously, Cam Akers, though, done for the season with that Achilles. I think that's going to be big. I think this team should go out and look for a veteran running back, maybe a remarriage with Todd Gurley, perhaps. What do you think they should do with this running back situation now that Cam Akers is gone?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best answer, if you can, go get a running back. You have Todd Gurley sitting at home right now, not doing anything. I know you mentioned there might be question marks regarding Gurley and McVay's relationship, but hey, if I'm Todd Gurley and I still want to play, and I have a team that's willing to pay me that could potentially get me closer to a ring than ever before for Gurley at least, I take that chance. I don't know how many offers are coming into Gurley, but he hasn't taken any, so might as well reunite with the team that put you on the map.
Yeah, I definitely think if there's no bad blood, if no bridges are burned, you got to go back. I mean, I think it's a perfect matchup for both teams. You played there, you know the system. It's the same coaches. You got good players over there. Why not go be great?
Exactly.
And give Matthew Stafford another piece, because this team that has high expectations, especially on offense. McVay is known to be this offensive genius. You give him a quarterback like Matthew Stafford. We're expecting numbers in and out every week for this offense. On the defense side of the ball, Still a very, very formidable team, if you ask me. Obviously, you're led by the all-world player in Aaron Donald up the middle, and you're led by an all-world corner in Jalen Ramsey. You know, you have two of arguably, probably the best players at their position,
Yeah.
and that's really crazy to have two of the best players at a certain position. Outside of that, though, you know, they still have some good players. So Matt, talk to us about this Rams defense.
Yeah, I mean it's a good 3-4. Like you said, you have two of the best players in football defensively. Donald, of course, is going to be leading that line with Ashawn Robinson and Sebastian Joseph Day. Uh, you know, obviously those other two guys aren't going to touch Donald when it comes to ability and stuff, but I do think it's good enough to get by. Uh, Linebackers, you know, led by Troy Reeder, Kenny Young. Um, it's a solid on the younger side, I'd want to say, but I think it gets the job done. It overall, it's just a defense that gets, I don't want to say gets by because they're better than that, but it's a overall pretty balanced defense led by two stars.
Yeah, I think they're going to be. I think this is a very, very well balanced Rams team. Obviously, you can't have superstars everywhere, and you have guys like Ramsey and Donald, and on the other side, Stafford. That's a lot of money chewed up in a certain amount of players. So to allocate funds to build around the rest of the team, I think the Rams have done a fairly good job about that. And this is a team that is aggressive. I don't think they picked in the first round in the past 5 years, to be honest. They trade their draft picks to get players because they're in a win now situation. And I think all eyes are going to be on the Rams this season, as I think right now they're the early favorite to win this division, if you ask me.
Yeah, on paper there is another team that we'll talk about that you and I both really really like. Of course, everything has to go right for that team to truly succeed. But I do have this team finishing in the top two in this division, probably about 11 wins I could see happening. Looking at their schedule, they do have a tougher schedule when it comes to out of division matchups. Of course, this division itself is pretty tough. And then you got tough opponents outside of it. Week 3, you're at home, but you're against the defending champs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Week 12, you got to go on the road to Lambeau Field. Never an easy place to play against the defending MVP, Aaron Rodgers. And then week 17, one of the final games of the season, you know, that's a playoff push time. You know, this, like we said, this division could be really, really close. You got to take on Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens at M&T Bank in Baltimore. It's not easy. The Rams do have one of the harder schedules, but like we said, it's a good team. So if anyone's able to kind of get past all that, it's going to be them.
Yeah, you know, looking at the schedule, they have two very big division games against the same opponent, the San Francisco 49ers, and they're backed up by some tough games. They play the Titans, then they go to San Francisco. They catch a bye week just to go play Aaron Rodgers. And at the very end of the season, you mentioned they play Lamar Jackson at the bank. Then right after that, they end the season with the Niners. So
yeah, it's not easy.
A tough stretch to match up with the Niners there twice.
And the Niners are an underrated team, and they could definitely fall into a wild card position or something like that come week 18, and that's gonna be just as important as the matchups I mentioned. Really, it really could come down to that.
Yeah, I definitely think that it could come down to those two games. And speaking of the Niners, you know, let's just roll right into them and talk about them. This is a team that 2 years ago, they were 5 minutes from winning the Super Bowl. I mean, Pat Mahomes won a tear, won the game for him. You know, you're going in the next to last season. You know, you just came off of a tough Super Bowl loss. You still have a lot of the same players on the team. Then the injury bug absolutely killed this Niners team.
Yeah.
This was not the same Niners team we saw that was in the Super Bowl. That just a ton of their best players were hurt. Jimmy G was not healthy. Nick Bosa was hurt for the season. They lost. It seemed like a running back every single week. George Kittle was fighting injuries. Just nothing seemed to go the way of this Niners team. And now most of the offense is back intact and healthy. There's some question marks on the defense, and no longer is Robert Saleh leading this defense. He is gone to go coach the New York Jets. And I think that is the biggest question mark on this team. You still have some great players. The secondary is still looking a little bit suspect, which we'll talk about. But DeMeco Ryans comes in and takes over this defense. So, Matt, how you feeling about the Niners?
There's hope, especially with everyone coming back healthy. Obviously, Nick Bosa on the defensive end is going to be fantastic. Very, very important piece of the defense. George Kittle at full strength is very influential in their offense. We don't know how much longer Jimmy Garoppolo will be quarterback in San Francisco. There were question marks in the offseason whether or not they were going to trade for another quarterback, someone like Matt Stafford. He was rumored in that, but it seems they're going to go with Jimmy G for the time being, which I think is fine. They lost some running back depth. Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, both gone, but you still have Raheem Mostert, the guy that he's been their guy since around that Super Bowl. And then behind that, I mean, you really want Mostert to stay healthy because that's important. You got two younger wide receivers leading the charge, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. You bring in the vet Mohamed Sanu, which I think is very helpful. And then you bring in Alex Mack, the center, definitely helps that line along with Trent Williams, protecting Jimmy G pretty well. I do think this team, 6-10 last year, I don't think really speaks to what they truly are because, like you said, the injury bug definitely bit them pretty bad. And I definitely think they're an above 500 team this year. No doubt about that. It's just how far above 500.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things about this offense. You mentioned they lost some running back depth, but they also brought on some running back depth. They went and drafted 2 running backs. They got Elijah Mitchell late in the draft. They picked Trey Sermon in the middle of the draft. I think both those guys are going to have a chance to run the football behind Mozart, Jeff Wilson, and Wayne Gallman. This is a team that Kyle Shanahan, he likes to run the football, and he likes to use a whole bunch of different guys, not necessarily giving one guy 30 touches in a game. Some guy will get 12, another guy will get 5, another guy will get 6. He likes to spread the ball around, and especially with the way the running backs have been getting hurt recently. I don't know what's been going on, but it seems like everyone may need to get a touch. And then you mentioned the quarterback battle, everybody's talking about. I think Jimmy G safely right now QB1, but maybe not so safe. I think that the word is Trey Lance is lighting it up over there in training camp. And if he gets the opportunity, he's going to run away with it, is what the word is out in San Francisco right now. So Jimmy G needs to stay on his P's and Q's because Trey Lance looks like he might be able to come in there and strike lightning very, very fast. So this is a team that, if you're a rookie quarterback, normally, you have a whole new staff. You have a lot of young guys around you. If Trey Lance gets to play, he's got some guys. He's got George Kittle. He's got Deebo Samuel. He's got Brandon Ayuk. He's got a team that went to Super Bowl 2 years ago. He's got a seasoned head coach. I think it's something different than that rookie quarterback doesn't necessarily always get. And I think it would be a good situation if he gets the opportunity. And on defense, I like everything except the secondary. I think the secondary might be a little bit weak.
Yeah, the secondary could definitely use some work, but you could definitely trust your line. D Ford, Javon Kinlaw, Nick Bosa, as mentioned. Eric Armstead. I really like this line. I think might even be a top 5 line in football on paper. And then linebacker, you got Fred Warner, who I know just got his bag in the offseason. So I like the defense for the most part. But yeah, the secondary, I think, could definitely use another piece or two.
Yeah, definitely all eyes are going to be on Jason Verrett as he slides into that QB1 role with cornerback 1 role, CB1. With Richard Sherman now gone, Verrett, former first-round pick, was often injured, but when he's healthy, he's been absolutely dynamite player. So I hope all is well with him and he can stay healthy and prove that he can still be a very good top corner in this league. Looking at their schedule, Matt, they open up with some winnable games. They open up with Detroit and Philadelphia. They could easily start 2-0 if you ask me in the season. Then they get Green Bay, Seattle, Arizona, some tough games, the divisional games. What are some games you're looking at on the Niners schedule this season?
Yeah, I'm going to mention Green Bay in almost every schedule they're in just because any team with Aaron Rodgers is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Week 3 against Green Bay, like you said, after that, they go into the stretch of in-division guys that are really important to beat. Week 16, you got to head to Tennessee. That's down to the wire those last few weeks. And you close out your season in LA against the Rams, which, the Rams, like we said, look good. That is a must-win game for either team, no matter where they're at in the standings. You could play spoiler if you're out of the playoff picture, or if you're battling to be in it. Winning that game could put you in it for good. So week 18 against LA is definitely the matchup to look out for. And those other two are definitely no slouches either.
Yeah, this is definitely a team with some interesting schedules. I want to look at another team that we mentioned. We just mentioned before with the Rams. I mentioned how they had a couple of tough games, right around those Niners games. The Niners in their season with a tough 2 out of 3 stretch at Tennessee, home against Houston. We already mentioned Houston in a prior video. They're going to struggle this season. Then they go to LA. Going to Tennessee and to LA for 2 of the last 3 games, that's tough because those are teams that we mentioned, you got to beat the good teams to get into the playoffs, and those are going to be 2 teams fighting. And I think those are going to be 2 interesting games in the season.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, it's going to be really, really important.
Moving on up in this division, we're going to go up to the great state of Washington, where the Seattle Seahawks, the division winners from last season, flying under the radar maybe a little bit. This is a team that returns a lot of people from last season. and especially on offense. But maybe that's the problem because this team doesn't seem to have made any significant upgrades, if you ask me. Obviously, we all know what's going to go on offense. We all know Russell Wilson is the engine that keeps this car going. He does everything for this team, when it seems like the offensive line isn't doing enough blocking. He runs around and makes plays. He has the weapons in Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Chris Carson. All these guys have been together for a few seasons now, and they've put up great numbers, but they have not been able to go back to a Super Bowl. So, Matt, talk to me how you feel about the Seattle Seahawks team.
Yeah, this team did not do what they needed to do in the offseason. I think that was bring in a couple guys, especially on the defense. Russell Wilson, you don't really have to worry about. He's a top 3, top 5 quarterback in this league. DK Metcalf had a very good season last year. I think he's going to improve even more this upcoming year. And then Tyler Lockett, we know what to expect. He's been around long enough. But this team does not stand out to me like they used to. I mean, you win 12 games last year. I think there's no chance this team wins 12 this year, especially with everyone else bringing in players and improving their teams for this season. The offense, I'm not that worried about. Maybe go get another lineman to protect Wilson a little more, just because their line doesn't stand out to me that much. But the big question mark for me is the defense.
Yeah, I understand and agree with you. This offense to me, I don't have any problems with. They even added to it with one of their top picks. They picked the receiver, Dwayne Eskridge, out of the MAC, the speedy guy, which is surprising to me because for me, the problems are with the defense. Obviously, you have Jamal Adams and Bobby Wagner, two fantastic players. But for me, I'm looking at the defensive line and I'm looking at where are the pressures going to come from? Where are the sacks going to come from? Because for me, I think they're banking on some guys that they probably should be banking on. You're banking on a guy like Carlos Dunlap and Robert Nkemdiche to have resurrecting type seasons. I'm struggling to see where they're going to get to the quarterback at.
Yeah, the only guys I'm really trusting on this defense right now is Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams. And Jamal Adams has had some contractual, issues or disputes. So we're still guessing he's going to play, but he doesn't seem, happy with the current contract in Seattle. Who knows where we'll go with that? But yeah, a lot of questions at this. It's a 4-3 defense, which I don't think is a problem. Just you need people that can actually help with that. And it's really lackluster. I mean, I know it's a while ago now, but you had the Legion of Boom and it's been all downhill from there.
Yeah, I don't necessarily hate the secondary with Jamal Adams. Opposite him, they got Trey Flowers, they got Akila Weatherspoon, they got Behir Desir. They're not horrible at corner, but like I mentioned before, obviously your corners need help with the ability to get to the passer. And when Jamal Adams might lead your team in sacks again, I think that's a problem. You don't necessarily have a defensive end that's going to go get the quarterback. I think that's going to make the rest of the defense suffer as a whole, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive that Blitz Boy can get some sacks, but I don't like when a member of your secondary leads your team in sacks. Like, it just doesn't feel right to me. I feel like that's something that the defensive line should take pride in. And if we get the Dunlap from a few years ago, we might have a new sacks leader on that team, but that's a gamble. That's a real gamble that Seattle's taking. I don't think Dunlap's a bad player, but who's to say he's what he was years ago?
Yeah, the Seahawks are definitely banking on some things going their way, buying low and on some of these old veteran type players. And looking at their schedule, I think it's pretty tough to start out. At the Colts, host Tennessee, at Minnesota, at San Francisco, home against LA, then at Pittsburgh. It's a tough first 6 games, and I definitely think they could be looking at a losing record out of the gate.
Yeah, it's not easy to start, and then it doesn't get that much easier. Week 7, you're heading to New Orleans to take on the Saints, who, no Drew Brees, but still a good team around the quarterback, who we're guessing will be Jameis Winston. That's not easy. And then once again, Green Bay, week 10, I have to mention it. You're going to Lambeau, blah, blah, blah. Week 18, another in-division matchup to finish the year. You're in Arizona taking on the Cardinals, who obviously we'll get to next. We're pretty big on them. So that's going to be an important matchup. I honestly have them projected winning 7 games, which is a complete another disappointment going from 12 wins to 7, but they've truly regressed. And I think you can agree in almost all aspects of the game besides, the quarterback position and the wide receiver position, spots like that. This is not the same team that we saw last year.
Yeah, I definitely think this team could be in danger of having a very aggressive season. I think they're going to have to win some shootout type games. I think it's going to make for some interesting games, some good fantasy points for you fantasy football players. But for the Seahawks, I definitely think they could regress, and not necessarily because they're a bad football team, but because some other teams around them made better moves, got better, and this division is just very, very tough. So that's just how the cookies. Someone has to lose football games in the division,
Yeah,
and I think the Seahawks could find themselves as a team losing football games because we mentioned their other two teams are great. And there's one other team that we're about to talk about that I think me and you are particularly high on. And if things go clicking, this team could shockingly win the division. And if not, make the playoffs because last year they flirted with it. And that is the Arizona Cardinals. This is a young football team. Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach, offensive wizard, very young, charismatic guy. Kyler Murray, young quarterback. This offense is dynamic. They have a lot of pieces on this team. They lost Kenny and Drake, but who cares because they lost Ferry Fitzgerald
yeah,
to retirement. That's a legend. We care about that.
that's
But
big. Yeah,
come in and they get a guy who potentially could be huge in AJ Green. If he could stay healthy to pair him up with DeAndre Hopkins, my goodness, that can be a tandem for Kyler Murray.
yeah. The Cardinals have made a lot of upgrades in the offseason that I like a lot. If you would have told me 5 years ago that D Hop and AJ Green were going to be sharing a offense, I was going to tell you you're insane. There's no way because those are two of the top wide receivers of this generation when healthy. Of course, AJ Green's had issues with that, but we're obviously hoping he stays in there because he's very fun to watch and could do wonders for this Cardinals offense. Kyler Murray definitely coming into his own. Uh, Running back James Conner, I think picking him up as a backup for Chase Edmonds is, one of the better backups in football. You're not going to use your tight end Max Williams as much. I really like the um, offensive line, picking up Rodney Hudson, who had great success in Oakland / Las Vegas. DJ Humphries, Justin Pugh, really quality guys. Kyler Murray will be well protected, and I think that's going to play a big part in this. And I really, really like what I see from their offense.
Yeah, their offense is going to be really good in my opinion. If AJ Green stays healthy, not only does that do wonders for Kyler Murray and having him and D Hop, but then a guy like Christian Kirk around them working out to settle into their roles. They don't have to be number one, number two guys. They can play in the slot. They can get catch it plays. They can catch quick screens and then use their athleticism, their speed to just be great with the ball in their hands. And I think, and a guy like Andy Isabella can get the ball in his hands too as well on plays like that. And I think that just helps everybody just get more comfortable. So you don't have to play anywhere outside your position. On the other side of the football, they made a huge signing to me that not only reflects what they're going to do on the field, but off the field. Getting JJR from the Houston Texans was big, not only because JJR is obviously, when healthy, one of the best defensive pass rushers in the game of football, but he is one of the few guys on this football team that has experience in the playoffs. The Texans for a number of years kept going to the playoffs, and JJ Watt was an integral part of that. When you look at this roster, it is very, very young and it lacks playoff experience. Outside of him, Malcolm Butler and Chandler Jones, a lot of these players haven't really had playoff success or really been to it. So I think he can come in and not only stabilize the defense, but be a true leader in this locker room and really help this team get over the hump.
Oh yeah, JJ Watt coming in is massive. Of course, we saw his impact in Houston, and now Houston had some decent years with him being there, but now I think is like Stafford with the Rams. This is a true chance for him to win and to find success, find some quality playoff time. And he joins a defense with a few other great names. I love Chandler Jones sticking around at the linebacker position. Buda Baker is coming off the best season of his young career. I love what we've seen from him. We got Malcolm Butler uh, at the cornerback position. He's obviously well known for more than a couple plays. Marcus Golden, like you said, Isaiah Simmons though is probably a player that we'd like to see more of. I think I know you mentioned to me that his rookie year was a little subpar, or at least by what you expected from him. But I think he's got a lot of guys around him on this defense to pick him up, and I do really like what I see.
Yeah, I definitely think it was hard for a guy like Isaiah Simmons to go from college where you're playing multiple positions, just roaming and wrecking havoc, to going to a league with bigger, faster players. And then, you're stuck in the one position that you didn't necessarily always play in college because you played so many different positions. You never had the chance to sit there and master one and become just a true Jedi of one position. You're doing all these other things. But I think him coming into another season at linebacker could be really good. And they had Zayvon Collins, the rookie at Tulsa. I think they can be a good duo up the middle for this Cardinals team. And then they got playmakers everywhere on this defense. And if everybody can play up to their standards, I think this team has the potential to not only make the playoffs, but they can challenge the teams at the top of this division when they're on their A game, if you ask me.
100%. It's probably not our favorite for the division, but on paper they definitely could be. If all goes well, if every player plays up to their standards, which never happens in sports, but if everyone were to, this is a very, very good football team.
Oh yeah, definitely. We may not necessarily be picking them to win the division, but I definitely have them as one of my sneaky teams in the whole league.
Yeah,
And this team, they flirted with potentially making the playoffs last year. I think this year they can definitely get over the hump and get one of those 3 wild card spots, if you ask me.
100%. And their schedule, like the rest of the division, isn't easy. Of course, you got the in division matchups, but for the Cardinals, I mean, have to start your season in Tennessee against the Titans, a team probably better than they're coming off the best season in quite some time.
That's gonna be a good game. That's
And
gonna be one of the best games of week 1, I think.
I 100% agree, but it's a tough way to start your season though, for sure.
Yeah, I think they'd much rather catch week 1 with their week 3 opponent, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Right. Yeah.
But you got to play what's in front of you, and if you could start off with a win against a team like that, that just does wonders for your team. They have a late bye week, week 12, but heading into their bye week, they play some tough games, but they play some very winnable games. Houston, Green Bay, San Fran, Carolina, Seattle. I could definitely see them taking 3 of those games potentially. Then you come out of the bye to end the season. You get a Detroit and Dallas in there, Indy. Those are teams that you can beat. They're not the number 1s and number 2 teams in the conferences, but they're still good football teams. But these are games you can win, and I definitely think the Cardinals are going to have the ability to win a lot of football games this season.
Yeah, I got them winning about 11 games. I mean, my numbers might be a little high just because each team is pretty solid in this division, but that's the same amount I have for the Rams. I think those two towards the top of this division makes sense, and it'll be a shootout to the end.
I said, so you have them winning 11 games, that would be an improvement on last season's 500 record. So I think they're definitely going in the right direction for Cliff Kingsbury and company in Arizona.
I 100% agree. I'm really looking forward to not just the Cardinals, but this division as a whole, because down the stretch, it's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, just looking at it, I definitely think this division is I think it's by far the strongest in the NFC.
Yeah,
the NFC South, the NFC East is the NFC least. The NFC North, obviously, the Packers are on top, and I think the Bears and the Vikings are kind of neck and neck, and the Lions are just the Lions. And in the South, I think the Bucks are going to be above the rest of the teams in that division. So this is definitely the best team in the NFC, and I think probably in the whole NFL, like we mentioned a couple times.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. That's all I was really left to say.
Well, this division is definitely going to be a toss-up. So I think right now the early favorite might be the Rams. I think the Niners have a lot to say. I think I'm gonna put the pencil in the Cardinals third. How about you?
Yeah, I think right now you got to go Rams, you got to go Cardinals, and then I think the Seahawks, are not on they're good, but they're not on the level of the other 3 teams. But I do think the 49ers and Seahawks might have a little battle for third. But none of these teams are going to, all these teams are going to win at least like 6-7 games. I would like to hope. We're not going to see a 4-win team or anything like that, but wherever it finishes, it's going to be tight.
Yeah, I'm kind of high on the Niners this season. I'm really interested to see if Trey Lance gets a crack to play this season, because I think if he does, he's going to be an electric player. But for that, I'm Jamil. That was Matt. This was the NFC South. This was the NFC West breakdown. Thank you guys for watching.
Beautiful outro. Very good.